afternoon all. Today topic of our lecture is other applications of polarography for coordination compounds. In the previous lecture, we have seen how polarography can be applied for the study of coordination compounds, and we have seen the calculations for the reversible wave and irreversible wave. For the complex formation reaction, which are reversible in nature, we saw how we can calculate the stability constant and how we can reduce the structure of that complex using the polarographic information, and we call it a reducible wave. And we have also seen the calculations for irreversible wave, in which the complex is so stable, a chelate is formed, and since the reaction is irreversible in nature, so we get an irreversible wave in the polarography, and how we can deduce information from it. Today we will see other applications. Polarography can be applied for coordination compounds in so many other different aspects. And what are those aspects which can be used, which can be studied by using the polarographic technique? So first of all, let us look the structural and kinetic factors affecting the reduction process. Basically, in the polarography, what process we are recording? We are studying the process of reduction. So, whenever the polarographic experiment is performed, what is the reaction that is taking place inside the system? So, here in this diagram, you can see this is the electrode surface, this is the surface of electrode, and from the surface of electrode, the area above the electrode surface where the double layer exists. You know that on the electrode surface we have a double layer of ions. The first layer is the ions of opposite charge. Then the next layer will be of layer of the next type of ions available in the solution, and in this manner we have a double layer, or you can say a layer of diffusion layer is formed over the electrode surface, and within this layer the electrode process occurs. What is the electrode process? If we talk about the dropping mercury electrode, so basically the reduction takes place on the electrode surface. So this electrode process is the process of reduction which takes place inside this part. On the electrode surface we have a double layer, and this is the edge of the electrode double layer. So the electron transfer takes place within this double layer. Outside this electrode double layer, we have the analyte solution. So what happens? This is connected to the bulk of the solution, and the depolarizing particles diffuse in from the bulk of the solution. These particles are coming towards the electrode due to the depolarization. When you apply the potential, depolarization occurs, and the ions start moving towards the electrode surface. Now, when they enter inside the double layer, the structural changes occur before they enter into the double layer. Now, after entering into the double layer, structural changes under the electrode influence, giving the form capable of direct reaction with the electrode. These structural changes are helpful for the electrode reaction. So, what is electrode reaction? There will be transfer of electron, right? What will happen on the electrode surface? The electron will be transferred. So this transfer could be either from the analyte to the electrode surface, or electrode surface to analyte. So when the electrons are transferred from analyte to the electrode surface, this is the process of oxidation, right? Oxidation of analyte takes place. And when the electrons are transferred from the electrode surface to the analyte, this is called reduction. So any of these processes could occur, and they are known as the electrode process. So the electron transfer occurs on the electrode surface after the analyte has entered into the double layer, and after this process is done, when the oxidation or reduction is done, generally we can say the reduction is done. What happens? The structural changes in the primary product occur, and then the chemical changes occur, and then what the products are formed and they diffuse out to the bulk solution. So in order to perform the reaction on the electrode surface, what happens? The analyte has to diffuse through the electrical double layer over the electrode surface, and then the products diffuse out from this layer. So this is the electrode process, which is occurring on the electrode surface. This could be generally reduction, and this is the overall redox reaction. So overall redox process is what if the oxidation is occurring on this electrode, then the reduction will be taking place on any other electrode, or if a reduction is taking place here, then oxidation must be occurring somewhere else. So that is the overall redox reaction. Okay? The reduction cannot occur by itself, or oxidation cannot occur alone. So both oxidation and reduction, they are occurring at the same time. So at this electrode surface, any of the process is occurring, and so you can see here so many structural changes are involved here, and at the same time the speed of the ion moving towards the electrode surface, it also matters. So we have so many structural and kinetic factors which affect this process of reduction, and therefore what happens, we can study these factors using the polarographic information. So how we can study the structural factors using the polarography? So both the mechanism and rate of the overall electrode process, it depends upon the energy and the localization of the lowest occupied orbital on the reducible species. So here the LUMO of the reducible species, it plays a role, and the overall electrode process is affected by the energy and localization of the LUMO. So it is into such orbitals that the electrons provided at the electrode in a reduction process are received. So why the LUMO is affecting the process? Because when the electrode will transfer electron to the analyte molecule has to receive these electrons somewhere, right? Then only the reduction will take place. Primarily, we are considering the reduction process only in this study. So these electrons has to be accepted somewhere. So where the molecule will accept these electron in the LUMO of the orbital. In the LUMO of the molecule, these electron will be accepted. So the depolarizing particle should have a high electron affinity. Then only the reduction will be fast. Otherwise, what will happen? The reduction will be slow if the electron affinity is low. So the depolarizing particle here, that is the analyte molecule, it should have a high electron affinity here, and the direct transfer of electron to these vacant orbital may take place. So the electron transfer process will be quick, will be efficient if the analyte molecule has the LUMO, that is the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital in the lower energy side, and also it should have high electron affinity. So in that case, the electron transfer will be very fast. So if such a condition does not hold, the electronic energy of the complex may change in such a manner that direct reaction with the electrode is made possible. So when the complex formation is also involved in this, when you are studying the complex formation, this was only about the reduction of the metal ion. But what if the complex formation is taking place here? So what happens here? Then the electronic energy of the complex will also change, and that will affect the electrode process. So when the complex is formed, obviously the LUMO will be changed. The energy of the LUMO will be different, symmetry of the LUMO will be different, and then what will happen? The electrode process will be changed. So that change will be reflected in my polarographic wave, right? And by observing carefully what kind of polarographic wave we are getting, we can elucidate these structural factors. So the energy necessary to produce this change constitute an important and sometimes the major part of the activation energy of the electrode process. So, any other chemical reaction, any other process, this process also requires the activation energy. So that activation energy has to be overcome by the electrode process. The configurational changes occurring immediately after the electron transfer, they cannot be directly determined. Why? Because then in that case, they are not directly affecting the polarographic wave. Configurational changes are like the structure of the product is different from the structure of the reactant. So once the reduction process is complete, and the complex formation is also taking place inside the solution, then the configurational changes you cannot determine them immediately. And how then how what is the alternative solution then? we have to infer them. We have to infer the structure by referring to the structures of secondary products derived from them. So this method is what you can have an indirect access to these factors. So in attempting to correlate the structure of complex with the polarographic behavior, basically the substitution reactions are considered. So, in these, with the help of these substitution reactions, you can correlate the structure of the complex and its polarographic behavior. So, the major complexes studied for this thing, they are the trivalent cobalt and chromium complexes, and the reaction used was like equation, which may occur in the solution, and in fact may be of more help since they usually take place to a sufficient extent to allow the change in the morphology of the waves with the time to be followed. In the limited time, if you need to get the change of the polarographic wave, then uh, in the cases of the cobalt and chromium trivalent complexes, the equation reactions were studied. And in equation reaction, what will happen? The water molecule will enter in the coordination sphere, and they are producing a sufficient change in the morphology of the wave. So the recent study by Legg and Crow worker, they along with his scientist, they have shown important correlations between the polarographic and spectroscopic behavior. How you can say that a polarographic behavior of a complex is also correlated with its spectroscopic behavior? Because they both are related to the structural factors. The energy of the reactive or transition state capable of taking part in the electron transference depends on the energy differences between the ground and excited state of the central metal ion. So, that energy difference between the ground and excited state, this will decide what will be the energy of reactive intermediate or the transition state during the reaction. So that energy difference plays a role, and that energy difference is actually which we get to know during the spectroscopic analysis. In spectroscopic analysis, what you are determining, that energy difference is actually what you are getting to know when you are applying IR spectroscopy or electronic spectroscopy or microwave spectroscopy. So these are all different form of energy that you provide according to the energy difference between ground and excited state of the central metal ion. So if the energy depends on the ligand field strength of the complex, if the separation of these two energy level for the metal ion, if it is depending on the ligand strength, like we have seen when the ligand approaches to the metal atom, what happens? There is splitting of the orbitals, right? And the electronic transition will take place from the lower energy d orbital to higher energy d orbital. So the ligand field strength also matters here, and if the difference is too large, then what will happen? Complex may well be non-reducible. Complex will not reduce. So any effect which decreases the energy difference leads to the easier reduction. So you need to have a ligand which does the lesser splitting of the d orbital, and therefore the energy difference should be low, and then only the reduction of the metal complex is possible. So in this series, Black studied the substitution in the octahedral cobalt 3 complexes of the type COX6 and COX5Y. COX6, this is the homolactic type of a complex, and COX5Y, this is heterolactic. So many cases the COX6 type complex is not reducible, whereas the substituted form may be reducible owing to the splitting of Eg and T2G level caused by the substituent Y. So in the homoleptic case, the COX61, here the complex is not non-reducible because the energy difference is too high, and electronic transition is not possible. But in case of the substituted one, when we have a Y ligand also present along with the X, then what will happen? The splitting of the Eg and T2G level, this will cause the complex to get reduced. So, should both the form of the complex be reducible, the substituted form has a more positive half potential. If I can say that both these species, the COX6 and COXY5, they both are reducible, then definitely the substituted form will have more positive half wave potential. So the larger the separation of the ligand X and Y in the spectrochemical series, the larger will be the potential shift. And by changing the ligand in the complex, you can definitely study the structural factors. Similar trends are found for the complexes of chromium-3 and rhodium-3. So these studies were basically done for the cobalt-3 complexes, but they are equally true for chromium and rhodium in their +3 oxidation state. So greater will be the difference of these X and Y in the spectrochemical series, greater will be the separation of the d orbital, and then the complex will become non-reducible. And even if both the complexes are reducible, then in that case the species of the Y species, this will have a more positive half-life potential. So distinction between the isomeric species is the second application that can be studied. And here for the octahedral cobalt complexes, the reductions proceed irreversibly in mainly two stages: the cobalt 3 and cobalt 2, cobalt 2 to cobalt. So, for such type of complexes, we can also distinguish between the isomeric species. The reduction is taking place. First, the copper is converting from its plus 3 to plus 2 oxidation state, and then plus 2 to 0 oxidation state. However, in the first stage, when the copper is getting converted from plus 3 to plus 2, in many cases, it is represented by a doublet wave and others by a single wave. So, for example, like in the case of the isomers of this type, in which we have 4 ammonia ligand and 2 nitro ligands are there. So, here we get a single wave for the cobalt 3 to cobalt 2 step, and the E half value changes from minus 0.5 to minus 0.21 volt against the standard Calomel electrode for cis and trans forms. So the same relationship between the E half values and structure occur with the first wave of the doublet. So when you are studying such complexes, how will you identify the cis and trans forms? First, for the if we are considering only the first stage of the reduction, that is from plus 3 to plus 2 of the cobalt, then how we can find out the cis and trans isomer? So let us look at this table. In this table, you can see there is a comparison of E half values for cis and trans cobalt 3 isomers containing two negative groups. So when the two negative groups are here, like in the first case, we have NO2 twice. So this NO2 are actually two in number, and when we have two negative groups, they could be we can have a cis isomer where all the both the negative groups are present on the same side, and we can have a trans isomer where the two negative groups they are arranged on the opposite direction. So in the cis form, what will happen when you are studying the cis form? And for the first wave which is considering the conversion of cobalt 3 to cobalt 2. We have the E half values different. The cis value is lower than the trans value. And if we consider the second wave, then the cis value is greater than the trans value. So in both these cases, you can see the cis value for E half. If we are considering the first wave, then we can easily identify the cis isomer. In the second wave, the difference is not that significant, so the distinction is not possible. But in case of the first wave, you can easily identify the cis and trans isomer due to their different behavior. Why they are behaving different? Because again, as you know that we have a negative group attached here, so the molecule will behave like a dipole now. In the cis isomer, what will happen? The two negative groups will be present on the same side. So now the molecule will have more dielectric constant. It will behave like a dipole more as compared to the trans isomer, where the two negative groups are present opposite to each other. So therefore, when they are introduced into the polarographic system, their behavior in the electric field will be different. So therefore, we can identify the isomeric forms here. Again, in the second case, you can see here we have two negative groups, but both of them are different. And if both of them are different, then the cis form and trans form, they can be identified very, very easily in case of the first case. Why is it so? Because now the two forms, again, they are the two different groups, and when they are in the cis form, they will behave like a dipole, and their behavior in the electric field will be quite different than the trans isomer. But the separation of the E half values for cis and trans isomer, it will be really great as compared to the case when we have the same type of negative group involved. Again, in the case of second wave, the cis and trans isomer, the E half values are not that different. So, if you consider the first wave only, we can identify the cis and trans isomers of the complex species containing two negative groups. The second wave, which in each case appears at about zero point 0.4 volt, may correspond to the reduction of equated form of the parent complex, and the reduction of the parent complex itself being represented by the first wave of the doublet. The second phase, you can see there is no significant difference in the E half value. And why is it so? Both the waves they appear around zero point 0.4 volt. So this may be due to the reduction of the equated form of the parent complex. And in the first wave, you are seeing the simple conversion of cobalt C to cobalt 2, and in that case the cis form and transform they will have different behavior. So slight discrepancies between the half wave potential values for the second wave, they would tend to suggest that these correspond to the reduction of different intermediate forms. The equated species may be a hydroxo complex of some sort. So once the complex is solvated, now again the structure of the complex is changed, and now the cis and trans effect they will be minimized. So here the example is like if we are using water solvent, so the equated species may be like some hydroxo complex where OH or H2O is entered inside the coordination sphere. So the study of similar complexes with less than two negative groups was also carried out by other workers, and the E half values. Let us see them. Here you can see the comparison of E half values for cis and trans cobalt 3 isomers with one negative. In the earlier case, in the table 1, we have seen the complexes cis and trans isomers when we have two negative groups, but here we have only one negative group. So the difference of the E half value between the cis and trans isomer, this is not that significant here, because the only one negative group present here, it cannot produce the dielectric effect of that much amount. So, like in this case, for the cis isomer, the value of E half is 0.21, and for trans isomer it is 0.20. And for the second wave, when the complex is solvated, then the cis and trans isomer they are almost similar. And again, in this case, when we have a different negative group present here, there is a minute difference in the cis and trans isomer E half value, and for the second wave, the cis and trans isomers, they have the equal value of E half. So here you can deduce a conclusion that when the two negative groups are present on the complex, in that case it is very easy for you to identify the cis and trans isomer. However, when only one negative group is present, it becomes a bit difficult. So, the recent study of cis and trans rhodium complexes, they have shown that the half-wave potential of the cis isomer is considerably more negative than that of the trans form. This was another significant observation, and here you need not to calculate the E half values, rather you can just look at the polarographic wave, and here you can find out the cis and trans isomer. So these studies have reflected that the cis isomer, which is actually represented by the structure 2, and the trans form, which is reflected by the structure 1. So this cis structure, cis isomer, it has its half-wave potential is considerably more negative than that of the trans form. So the polarigram here is showing the cobalt complexes having two negative groups, and in this case you can see the transform. Its E half will be less negative as compared to the E half of the second. that is the cis form. So both waves are starting at the 0 volt, and the position of the polarographic wave, you can easily find it out that which one is the cis and which one is the trans isomer. Again, since the two negative groups are present here, you can see that the dielectric effect is more pronounced in case of the cis isomer. Similar studies were made for the rhodium complex, and in case of the rhodium complex as well, you can see the trans. This is the wave of a trans isomer, and this one is the wave of cis isomer. The cis isomer is showing more negative half wave potential as compared to the trans isomer. Again, in this complex, we have two negative groups involved. Two fluoroligands are involved here. So again, you can say when both the fluoro groups are present on the same side in the cis isomer, this arrangement of two negative groups on one side, it will produce polar effects, and therefore it will affect the behavior of the complex ion in the electric field, and that will be well reflected in case of this polarogram. Then after the identification of isomers, we can also go for the study of kinetic factors. This is another important aspect of polarographic application. What are the kinetic factors when you are considering the rate of the reaction, when you are considering the kinetics of the reaction? So, very often the rate of the dissociation of a complex as well as the rate of the diffusion. These two factors, they control the limiting current. What is the limiting current in polarography? We have seen what is the limiting current when the polarographic wave reaches to a maximum value, then its value becomes constant, and that is my limiting current. Above that point, the current will not increase whatever potential you are applying. So that is my limiting current. So the value of that limiting current in the polarographic wave, it actually it is decided by the rate of the dissociation of the complex and also the rate of the diffusion inside the solution. So it is possible to determine the stability constant from half wave potential and kinetic limiting currents obtained from the dissociation rate controlled waves. So these two things we can very well determine from the polarography, and we have seen how to calculate the stability constant for a complex using the polarographic data. And similarly, when you limit the current by kinetics of the reaction, like kinetic limiting current, you can obtain them by dissociation rate controlled wave. When you control the dissociation of the complex, you control the rate of the dissociation, then such waves you are getting, they are the kinetic limiting current. So the half wave potential of the kinetic wave, it is less negative than that of the hypothetical diffusion controlled wave. So hypothetical diffusion control wave, when you are suppose you have controlled the diffusion and you have maintaining a particular rate of diffusion in the medium, that is your hypothetical diffusion control wave. So the half wave potential of kinetic wave, it will be always less negative than that of the diffusion control wave. So the diffusion will have more pronounced effect on the kinetics of the reaction, on the half wave potential of the reaction, and this difference can be used to compute the consecutive stability constant in the normal way, provided that the dissociation reaction is followed by a reversible discharge process. So again, we have a condition here, the dissociation reaction. It should be followed by a reversible discharge process. Then only you can compute the distance between your diffusion controlled and kinetically controlled wave, and then you can find out the stability constant, the stepwise stability constant. And for deducing such things, we have a relation here. This is the relation for a diffusion controlled deposition, and it was modified by the scientists Corietta and Matsuda and Ayabe, and the expression derived was written here. So this is the expression for the diffusion controlled deposition, and here the values have their usual meanings. The ik replaces id in the equation 7. This is derived from your earlier equation. that we discussed in the previous lecture, and the new term is added, IK. So what is IK? IK is when you are controlling the kinetics. Kinetic limiting current. ID is the diffusion limiting current and IK is the kinetic limiting current. So this in effect corrects the half-wave potential of a kinetic wave for the slowness of the dissociation relative to the diffusion rate of a particular species. So here what you have done, you are considering the diffusion of the complex as well as the kinetics of the complex, and by controlling any of these parameters we can actually get the polarographic wave. So the diffusion current in case of the kinetically controlled wave is called IK, and the limiting current in case of the diffusion controlled wave it is called IT. So when this equation is simplified, another equation can be derived, and finally this form of equation you can get. So we were talking about this difference between the kinetically controlled wave and diffusion controlled wave. When you get to know the difference between these two polarographic waves, you can easily find out the kinetics of the reaction. So in that case, you need only the ID value and IK value for both of them, and you can finally find out the N value, or you can find out the kinetics of the reaction. So the method involves an estimated ID value based on a reasonable value for D and a knowledge of N. These equations have found important uses for the determination of stability constant data for several systems. So after correcting for the half-wave potential, the procedure follows the D-Ford-Hume graphical method. What was D-Ford-Hume graphical method? We have seen in the previous lecture. In the D-Ford-Hume graphical method, we derived an equation, and after deriving that equation, we have seen that when you plot a graph between the function of the ligand concentration along with the ligand concentration, then you get a straight line, and the slope of that line actually you get gives you the value of your stability constant. So that was the D-Ford-Hume graphical method, and this method also, the equation that we have developed here, if you apply the corrections here, and if you have the values of these quantities, then you can definitely follow this equation follows the same method like the D-Ford-Hume graphical method. So again, you can plot a graph and you can get the stability constant. Now, it is rare, especially faced with the several stepwise equilibria, to be able to know precisely the nature of the species present in the solution. Mostly, we do not know what is the behavior of species unless you are changing certain parameters. So, it is really difficult to know, and even it becomes really more difficult when the complex formation is taking place through different stepwise equilibria, and the stepwise formation of complex is taking place. So after all these complications, other complications are also added to the system when we have a binuclear complex formation, and also the low mobility of the equilibrium between the some species in the step complex. So what happens then, at any instance of time, so many complex species are actually present in the solution, and it becomes really difficult which species is going in which direction. What will be the behavior of all these different moieties? So not all the complexes may be electroactive at the mercury electrode. Suppose if four different complexes are intermediate in my complex formation, they are getting formed in the different steps. So it is not necessary that either of them will be reacting on the electrode. They all are not necessarily electroactive. So, in some of the cases, it has proved possible to determine both the chemical reaction controlling the overall rate and its rate constant. So, Oreta studied the cadmium cyanide system. It's a very important case study, cadmium cyanide system, where the cyanide concentration was changed from 0.005 to zero point 0.1 molar and obtained a limiting kinetic current IK related to ID, the limiting diffusion current for rapid dissociation, by the use of the expression. So he used this expression. Again, it is derived from the previous equation that we have just seen. So he studied the system of cadmium and cyanide, and he changed the concentration, and he derived the IK value and ID value. Now, from this equation, we have we can put here the value of IK and value of ID, where the P and N represent the composition of the complex, this P and this N, whose dissociation is rate determining. So, among all the different complexes involved during the stepwise formation, only the dissociation of one complex would be the rate determining step. Okay, we know that during a mechanism which involves several steps, only the slowest step will be the rate determining step. So, when we are considering so many complex species, the dissociation of only one complex would be rate determining. So, for that reaction, we are taking the PNN, that is the composition of complex whose dissociation is rate determining. So, the experimental determination of this quotient receives a value of P, value for P when N is known. In the system quoted, N is equal to 4 and the quotient was found to have the value minus 3.2. So P will be 3 and this would be the reaction. So when we are studying the cadmium cyanide system, the dissociation of this complex is the rate controlling. And how we calculated that? The complex is actually CdCN4 2 miles. This is the complex, and it is getting formed via different processes when only one cyanide is present, then two cyanide is attached, then three cyanides are attached, and then four cyanides are attached at the end point. So, among all these steps, the dissociation of this species, that is tricyano cadmium, dissociation of this complex is rate controlling step here. So that we calculated from this equation by putting the values of IK and ID, and when we have this is the constant value, and the concentration of X we know because this is a known quantity. So you can calculate the value of P and the value of N from this equation. So suppose N is equal to 4. N is equal to 4. Why? Because the total number of ligand that would be present in my complex would be 4. So N will be 4. So I have calculated the P value. And then after getting the P value, you can calculate the value of N again. So P is equal to 3 and my reaction will be this. This reaction will be the rate controlling step in this complex formation. So in this manner, polarography, these calculations, they can be used to elucidate the kinetic factors involved in the any complex species. Then other type of things that we can study using the polarography are the solvent variables. So solvent variables, the effect of solvent on the polarographic study. In the study of complex formation which involve measurement of half-wave potential shifts, it is necessary that care be taken to ensure that observed shifts are due to complex formation, especially that involve the required ligand without interference arising from other ligand. So this is a very important condition when you are applying the polarography for study of coordination compound. You need to get the shift in the half-wave potential after the complex formation, and that is how you calculate the stability constant of that complex. So when you are performing this experiment, when you are measuring the half-wave potential and you are getting the polarographic wave, it is very important that the reaction under your study, it is actually involving the complex formation with the desired ligand only. Okay, in that case, not any other ligand should not be involved. Any interference should not be there. Otherwise, your shift in the half-wave potential, it will be calculated with some error, and the stability constant you are getting will not be correct. So the nature of the complexes present in the solution, they can differ widely with the changing concentration of complexing ligand. So here it is very important that the concentration of the complexing ligand, it should be adjusted to a proper value, because according to the concentration of ligand, there are many systems in which the complex uh, the form of the complex, it changes according to the complexing ligand. So if indifferent electrolytes with good coordinating ability are used, indifferent electrolytes when means the solvent that we are using in polarography, we are using a supporting electrolyte, right? And in that solution we put our analyte. So the indifferent electrolyte with good coordinating ability are used. These can have a pronounced effect on both half-wave potential and diffusion current. Okay, so the supporting electrolyte that I am going to use for my polarographic experiment, what if it is having good coordinating ability, and during the complex formation reaction, what happens in place of ligand, that supporting electrolyte is producing some interference. So this will do what? This will affect the polarographic wave and the half-wave potential calculations that you are going to do. The solutions of ethanol, 2-methoxymethanol and dioxazine water. They have been used as polarographic solvent for the copper chelates of 1,3-diketones and for the copper and cadmium complexes with thiourea and its homologs. So these are the different solvent systems, and they are used as a supporting electrolyte in case of the polarography. They are known as a polarographic solvent. They are used for the complex reaction of the copper chelates with 1,3-diketones and the cadmium complexes with the thiourea. Solvent plays a very important role here. Now, another study that was conducted by Turion and Borlando, they studied the effect of a non-aqueous solvent on the polarographic behavior of many complexes. So, the non-aqueous solvent, do they affect the polarographic behavior of any complex? The study was made by these scientists. The main feature of this work was use of various concentration of methanol and ethanol in water. So they are what? Methanol, they both are the non-aqueous solvent. So they varied the concentration of methanol and ethanol along with the water. Now when the concentration of methanol or ethanol, it would be different in water, then the dielectric constant was found to have a pronounced effect on the stability of cadmium thiocyanate complex. So it was seen that when the ratio of methanol and ethanol in the water they are changed, the dielectric constant of the supporting the polarographic solvent changed, and it affects the stability of cadmium thiocyanate complex. So the stability constant varied inversely as the dielectric constant. As the dielectric constant of the solvent increases, the stability constant decreases. So in such mixed solvent system, lower members of the series SCN series, when the complex formation has just started and we have only one or two ligands inside the coordination sphere. So those were the lower members of cadmium SCN series. They are formed preferentially. These type of complexes will be formed when we have such mixed solvent system with a lower concentration of higher complexes and a general increase in the stability with increasing concentration of non-aqueous solvent. So when we are using the non-aqueous solvent, when we are increasing the percentage of either the methanol and ethanol in the water, then what will happen? The concentration of the higher complex will be more, because their stability will be increasing according to the change in the dielectric constant of my polarographic solvent. Lastly, we can also calculate the thermodynamic quantities from the polarographic data. So the thermodynamic quantities, the change in the free energy, change in the enthalpy, change in the entropy, they are in principle possible from the measurements of the formation constant at various temperatures. Although relatively few of such studies have been made polarographically. So, what are the studies that are done to find out the thermodynamic quantities from polarographic data? So, the complexes of nickel and copper with the glycine and valine, they were studied over the range of 25 to 40 degrees Celsius, and the results were actually well in agreement with the result obtained from potentiometric studies. So the change in the enthalpy values varied from minus 14.0 to minus 21.0 kilocalorie, but the change in entropy value they varied considerably with both a positive and negative result. So these studies were done using the polarographic studies, and later on the results were compared with the potentiometric studies as well. A regular increase of enthalpy thus occurs with each ligand attachment. As more and more ligands are getting attached to the metal atom, there is increase in the enthalpy value with a corresponding negative entropy increase, and there is decrease in the entropy. So the variability in the entropy value for complex formation is well shown by the values obtained for mercury, cadmium and zinc complexes with ethylene diamine. So you can see here the entropy changes are minus 5 plus 3.4 and plus 10.7 EU respectively for such complexes when they are reacting with the ethylene diamine, and more recently by the cadmium complexes of histamine and related compound where the entropy changes are minus 19 EU for the anti-steam to plus 4 EU for the Benadryl. So these are the thermodynamic quantities. We have seen some examples how we can go to find out the thermodynamic quantities of a complex and how they vary during the complex formation reaction. So that is all from my side. Thank you for joining.